Lucas Rotuno, Dylan Valdez, Oscar Hayfron, and Henry Hughes. Happy birthday to you all. We will now hear from Father Perry.
Good morning. Today I'll be speaking to you about the Jesuits and the Holocaust. From the time before and after the beginning of World War II, the Jesuits opposed the Nazis and were sympathetic to all who suffered under Hitler. The Jesuits suffered and resisted the Nazi regime in every country the Germans invaded. Their property was confiscated and they were deported or imprisoned. Two of the better-known Jesuits of that time were Father Rupert Meyer and Father Alfred Delp. Rupert Meyer spoke out against Hitler from his pulpit at St. Michael's Church in downtown Munich. He continued to preach against the Nazis and was imprisoned in 1937 for several months. He then continued to preach and condemn Nazi policy. He was rearrested and sent to the Sachsenhausen concentration camp. He was liberated by U.S. forces in 1945 in poor health, and he died later that year while saying Mass at St. Michael's Church. Father Alfred Delp was a Jesuit priest who worked on a Jesuit publication until it was suppressed by the Nazis in 1941. He was then assigned to a parish in Munich, where he secretly helped Jews who were escaping to Switzerland through the underground. Delp became a member of the Kreisau Circle, a secret group who were planning what a post-Nazi society would look like. Delp was arrested after being falsely connected with an attempt on Hitler's life in 1944. He was offered his freedom if he would leave the Jesuits, but he refused. He was tried and sentenced to death for treason, even though it was acknowledged that he had no part in the assassination attempt. His work as a Jesuit priest was enough to get him hanged. A number of years ago, I had the opportunity to visit the Dachau concentration camp, located outside of Munich in Germany. Dachau was the major prison camp for priests. Between 1940 and 1945, there were 96 Jesuits imprisoned there. A total of 2,600 priests spent time at Dachau. One of the barracks there was known as the priest block. It was a foggy day when I was there, a very eerie experience. Most of the buildings had been torn down, but you could see the foundations that marked where the building stood. It gave you a sense of the layout of the camp. It's impossible to get your head around the enormity of the suffering and death that Jews and others suffered during this period of history. It was hard to believe that people could perpetrate such horrors and then return to their families at night, as if it were just another day at the office. Over the course of the war, at least 225 Jesuits were killed out of a long line of Jesuits who either sacrificed their life or risked their life so that Jews and Gentiles might live together in freedom. The Holocaust was one of the most horrific events in human history. Brave individuals stood up against the violence and hatred that ruled the Nazi regime. I'm particularly proud of the brave Jesuits who stood up for the rights and dignity of all God's people, those Jesuits who gave aid to the Jews and resisted the brutal authority of the Nazi regime. If I could distill my thoughts on all of this, it would be to say two things: resist violence and choose life. It's nothing less than what Jesus would do, and it's something we can put into practice. Resist violence and choose life. I'll conclude with a prayer. Loving God, we come to you with heavy hearts, remembering the 6 million Jewish souls murdered during the Holocaust. In the horrors of that history, when so many groups were targeted because of their identity, and the genocides which followed, we recognize destructive prejudices that drive people apart. Forgive us when we give space to fear, negativity, and hatred of others simply because they are different from us. In the light of God, we see everyone as equally precious manifestations of the divine and can know the courage to face the darkness. Through our prayers and actions, help us to stand together with those who are suffering so that light may banish all darkness, love will prevail over hate, and good will triumph over evil. Amen. Thank you for your attention this morning. We have some questions on the slide for you to think about.